in the world of impact, everybody's talking about data. Most folks are really just focused on the outputs. It's like, show up, do some work. This is how many pounds of trash we did. This is how many people showed up and participated, the number of volunteer hours. Like, that is not impact to us. Towards that outcome or objective that then are going to lead to the societal level change that we know in your heart you're really after.
Amazing. Right. Wow. Welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Igniting Change. Did you want to introduce us and tell us who you are, what organisation you're with, and what role you play?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And also, I'm very proud to represent our team here as well. It's not just me. I get to be the one that talks sometimes, but pretty much everything we're going to talk about is the credit goes to them. So we'll start with that. My name is Dan Lammot. I am a surf bum from Southern California turned social entrepreneur, and I live and work from Puerto Rico. And yeah, that's what we do every day.
Amazing. And how long have you been based in Puerto Rico?
Off and on for about 20 years or so. My co-founder, who I also happen to be married to for 22 years as of this Friday, Lena, is from Puerto Rico. So that's how I got introduced to Puerto Rico. And I came down here for the first time in 1998 to visit the then future in-laws, and kind of fell in love, and it's been part of our life ever since.
Amazing. Well, congratulations for Friday. That's awesome.
Come
what
visit.
An achievement. Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of our clients out in Puerto Rico, actually. I've got one Replus Connect, Jasmine, who actually moved out last year, and she's doing an incredible project all around disaster recovery. So how local people essentially recover after being hit by a natural disaster. And obviously that has unfortunately been spurred on by recent events over the past few years. And then when someone from our network, from the Arise network, I'm sure is based out in Puerto Rico. And I've never been myself, but I've heard it's very, very beautiful.
It's not a bad spot. I'll have to connect with them. And yeah, Puerto Ricans are very resilient, and they definitely do everything they can to be innovative around resolving these challenges that they've experienced.
Absolutely. So, Dan, tell us your story. Like, how have you got to where you've got to today?
Yeah, by accident is the short answer. But within that, I think there were seeds planted very early in my life, coming from a medical family where we didn't talk about our parents being entrepreneurs, but they were. They ran a medical practice. My father was an orthopedic surgeon, and his real passion was children's orthopedics. And so between he and my mom, who was very involved in this practice, I think, really early on, we kind of got this idea in our minds that you needed to do more than just like make money for yourself or other people. And then I went to school. I went into banking tech, got involved in the kind of early years of cloud before it was called cloud and banking, and helped co-found a company that helped kind of put the first 70 banks or so on Salesforce. And that went really well for us, for the banks, for Salesforce. And then that business was sold, and one of the people that was part of that business who I cared deeply about. And I started thinking, like, this intersection of like a vertical market and cloud is a good thing, because you can build replicability, you can be more efficient, you can pass that savings on, you can deliver greater impact. And we wanted to do something that was a little more value aligned, and we ended up focusing initially on education, mostly 4-year schools. And a couple years in, collectively made the decision that it would be really smart to move into nonprofit fundraising. And so we did a bunch of nonprofit fundraising and the nonprofit grant management, again on Salesforce. And then Salesforce bought that company in 2019, and created a path, an option forward for all of our customers and our team. And I was still very excited about this idea of, as you guys call it, tech for good. And, we spent all of that time kind of helping medium to large organizations raise more money or deploy more funds through grant making. And so it was like money in and money out. But, in working with these platforms, we realized that, as capable and powerful as they are, they don't really reach the overwhelming majority of smaller organizations that are out there. They're too hard to use. They take too much time and expense to implement. And so, here we've sort of gotten to where we are now, where we still do a lot of that CRM work, and we now focus exclusively on the Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. So all of our work is basically Microsoft's mid-market and enterprise scale nonprofits that want to raise money or do more with grants or do case management and a lot of work around programs. But a big part of what we do is focusing on that significant population of nonprofits, or this exploding world of corporate impact. Call it ESG, call it CSR, pick your acronym, and focusing on the humans that are out there that haven't gotten master's degrees in nonprofit leadership, or don't have a ton of training and don't have $100,000 to spin up a Salesforce for Programs project, and they need a kind of a QuickBooks equivalent for impact. And so we have this app called b.world that really is that. It's the first AI-powered, QuickBooks equivalent for program design, impact measurement, and storytelling. And so all along the way, we've lived in lots of places. We've been really blessed with many opportunities, lots of ups and downs. And even though I'm like optimistic and happy here, there have been dark and challenging moments in the midst of that. There have been security threats to our customers and all kinds of really scary stuff. So it's been a wonderful journey, and one I'm really grateful for. And I'm still, flying by the seat of my pants every day. So.
I think it's a really lovely way of putting it, and a very positive way of putting that roller coaster of kind of the roller coaster journey that you're on, because it isn't easy. And I think sometimes it's that there's a perception that it is all fun and it's all good and everything's really positive, but the harsh reality is that it's a journey, and there's ups and downs, and sometimes there are more downs than there are ups. So navigating those can be really, really tricky, I think. But you seem to be doing it with a smile on your face, and you're still really hopeful and happy. Is that you as a person, Dan, or is that...
I think it's definitely me as a person. I think I also feel like I have ups and down days too, and so but I also find that like we at Threshold think that like our attitude and the work we do has to scale to the size of the problems that we face. And there's so many millions of people around the world working on this, and there's so many more people that are far less privileged than we are. So even when I'm having one of those moments, it just takes a second to kind of reset and try to remind yourself of like, think about the privilege you've been afforded so many times, from birth onwards, and suck it up and get after it, and then come up with solutions. And if you need to take a walk, right? Like get outside for a little while and then come back and reset. So it's definitely my nature to be optimistic, and that's probably part of the reason why I'm in the roles that I've been lucky enough to be in. But I also feel, I'm 47 now, so it's like starting to think about like, all right, well, is it halftime? Like, what's going on? And get after it. Like, there really isn't a moment to lose, right? And so it's pretty easy for me at this stage of life to be like, all right, family and Lena, our kiddos first. The work we do is super easy to jump out of bed every day to focus on, because it's either something about conservation or something about equity or something about human rights or something about causal areas that are really easy to get behind. And then the last thing is if I have time, I try to go surfing. So
well, I mean, I think that's amazing advice, and it's important. And I think taking a step back and prioritizing yourself, your family, your loved ones, and remembering that actually we are typically we're very, very lucky. And I think what's amazing about being in the tech for good space is it is that bit easier to get out of bed. You've got that purpose of, you know, that you're going to be making that positive impact. So it does make it easier to get on and do that stuff. So yeah. Right. So in that introduction, you used a really good or interesting analogy in terms of you're the QuickBooks for
Yep.
impact. Where's that come from, and why do you use that analogy?
Yeah. We've been trying lots of ways to explain b.world or b.world over the last year and a half or so. And
Okay.
there, all the people that are focused on impact, whether they're in corporate or foundations or government or nonprofits, the overwhelming majority of these people use spreadsheets, right? Pick your spreadsheets or paper. Like that is the tool of choice. And there's plenty of studies that say, well, 80% of nonprofits or 99% of companies, or doesn't matter. There's a huge number of people, and there's even more and more people every day that are looking for these meaningful work scenarios, right? And so, but over the last decade or two, all the money went into following the money, right? It went to following the money in through fundraising or following the money out through grants, but very little of it went to like the actual work, right? The work, like designing, like, I want to do something good. Well, what's the best way to do that? Right? And so when we came into this, well, here's a good example, right? So if you go look at monitoring and evaluation systems, right, or data collection systems, survey tools, the things people use in this world of like program design through implementation and communications, no, almost none, I should say, if not all of those systems are built around projects, right, around the work. They're not built around the people or the ecosystems that you're trying to steward or support or improve. But then go look at the commercial CRM market, and all of those systems are built around the concept of customer, right? Like the C is the first letter in the thing. So look at Salesforce, look at Microsoft, look at HubSpot, look at all of these amazing platforms out there. They're all built around the customer, but they're like, who's the customer in the impact world? And so, what we noticed was that there are lots of good component tools, but there's actually a progression that people ought to follow around thinking about the change they want to be part of or manifest and how you actually get there. And so if you were to go out and look at even some of the most reputable data-driven nonprofits or social impact companies in the marketplace, I would almost guarantee that they're using spreadsheets. Right? I even heard a story a couple of months ago of one of the most amazing companies in the world. You know what they do to put their impact report together once a year?
What?
They go hire
What?
100 top tier management consultants who run around the company looking for the data, looking for stories, and they spend tons and tons and tons of money on this stuff, and then they come out with authentic, validated data. But it shouldn't be like that, right? Like it should be as easy as like sign up and go. And it should be now AI powered. And so what we've been after is, and we knew this was going to be like jumping into the deep end of the pool. It's like, how do you compete with spreadsheets, right? So what we've been trying to do, and it's, the hypothesis is that if you could take consumer design principles, which you and the team at Three Sided Cube know a lot about, how do you make the technology accessible? And I mean that like by the true technical definition of it, but also easy to use, bring the price way down. So it's not $100,000 to turn the Salesforce thing on. You just like sign up for a subscription and there's a free trial and all that kind of stuff. And then build it around this workflow of brainstorming and ideation, bringing qualitative and quantitative results together so you can learn. And then equally important, make it so you can tell that story, because in the world of QuickBooks, like you tell the story through your financial statements, right? In the world of impact, everybody's talking about data, but data is not really that memorable. Like, if you go out and you look at impact stories, people, like even some of the largest organizations in the United States, like take maybe an organization like Catholic Charities, which is huge. Besides the U.S. government, they serve more people than anybody other than the U.S. government collectively. And it all comes down to one number. Like how many people did you serve last year? 17, 18, 19, 20 million people, right? It's these huge numbers. And the numbers matter, But for us, it's really about like if we need the pace of change to accelerate, and maybe this is the punchline. This is probably where I should have started. And we do need the pace of change to accelerate, then we need to be able to communicate more effectively about what works. And the way you do that is you make the technology accessible and you make it so that what we learn through trying to bring about change is also accessible. And it's not in like World Bank research reports that nobody reads, which is, one of the things they shared last year. It's like 90 something percent or 80% of the reports don't get downloaded because you know why they don't get read? Because people are focused on doing the work, not studying the work. And so, the idea behind b.world is to make it accessible and do it in the context of storytelling so that your narrative, your visuals, and your data are easily accessible and easily packageable so that we can surface that learning, and steward this idea that in this tech for good space, people like to share, not like in banking where I originally came from, where nobody likes to share, even on the desk next to you, right? So, yeah.
Well, and it's an interesting point you make just in terms of wanting to share. So definitely, in the for good space, I think, and my experience has been to date, that everyone is way more collaborative and way more open to sharing insights and learning so that people can get there quicker. That doesn't always
Yeah.
happen, but like they're definitely more open to it. Whereas in the maybe in the for-profit space, people are less collaborative, and it's all it's all about my secret sauce.
Right.
Like I can't possibly share that or share those insights because you might get there before me. So I do definitely love that about the tech for good space. But I mean, times are changing. I think it has to change in any space that you operate in
Mm-hmm.
now, like to get any kind of change. And I definitely think there's this more of a trend is the wrong word, but there's definitely more intent from all sectors all over the world to do more good out there.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it's moving in the right direction. So tell me more about the platform
Yeah.
because you're making it sound amazing and very succinct, but I imagine it's been a journey to get to where you've got to
Yeah.
now.
It has been, and I think it'll continue to be a journey. I mean, we're still trying to
Okay.
learn what incentivizes people to take that first step to get off of spreadsheets, right? Like, what is
Yeah.
the thing that makes it stick? We have a lot more work to do on that front, and I think we're looking at this kind of like with a Patagonia mindset, right? Like let's do this for the rest of our lives kind of a perspective. We're not a big venture-backed company that's got people breathing down our throat. We've been bootstrapping this, and that's why we have the services side that does CRM, and the investments in b.world come from inside, because we think, if we can do this the right way, the outcome will be better, right? As opposed to feeling like we got to build it, flip it, sell it, et cetera.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, by the way, we're not open to strategic investments or partnerships or any of those kinds of things. So if anybody's listening and they want to talk, feel free to call. I'm always available. But we've been down that venture path before in other organizations, and it really changes incentives, right? And so for us,
Mm,
maintaining the alignment of the incentives is key. So b.world for the tech people out there, it's a multi-tenant SaaS platform, 100% built and running in Microsoft Azure, because we think that's the most scalable, secure, and now AI-powered infrastructure anywhere in the world. So no offense to AWS, it's awesome, but we're Microsoft to the core. So if you were an impact-minded person, like let's say you work in a company and you're running volunteer programs, or you're organizing the employees to go do interesting and meaningful things alongside the great products that you build, b.world is the kind of thing where you can jump in there, create the projects, and then if you're not sure how to bring about that change that you want, like maybe you and the team care about literacy, early childhood literacy, for example, and you're like, yeah, we're going to do some stuff that's going to help improve literacy in our community. So you can go into the app, create a project, click a button, and it will actually create a recommendation around how to improve childhood literacy in the context that you give it, using OpenAI's capabilities. So think of like a mind map, right, which we call a whiteboard. or for the monitoring evaluation people, a results framework or a theory of change. It will help you draft that using AI, and then you can click a button and it'll convert that to basically a project plan or a log frame or a logic model. And then you can design your indicators, track the quantifiable results. You have the ability to add things like the learning along the way and narrative, like decisions or risks or mistakes you've made, et cetera, so you don't lose that important context alongside the data. It's got some project management tools like documents and tasks and budgeting and so forth, which are really lightweight on purpose because we need lightweight tools for that stuff. Like you don't need Asana for most projects. Asana is a great project management tool, but trying to make all these things work together, the orchestration just diffuses the value. And then the kicker is, like, if you're going to do all that work, there should be a huge payoff. And what we learned from our early users was that usually inside that team, there's somebody who's like a great storyteller, right? And who's going to feed the marketing team or get into Canva and build the impact report or post it to social to do all the things that we try to do around impact. And so, we thought, well, if you're going to design the project and track the results and the learning, you should just be able to drag and drop that stuff into a story builder, right? And so you can inside a b.world. And if you're not sure how to do it, you just click a button and it'll draft it for you using AI now. So and then you can add narrative, you can add pictures, you can add video, you can drop map in, all of those different key components that are really visually appealing. And then you can post it to social directly, or you can just build this like diary of stories like you could, with an online storytelling app. So we sort of say it's like helps you strategize. We say from strategy to story is kind of the continuity. There's awesome tools in the market for like building visual frameworks. There's really good log frame builders and results apps. And then you can go use any of the commercially available communication tools. But we're the only ones that bring it together. And we're the only ones that have it AI powered. And it's also super cost effective. It's like $90 a month for 2 users, or a couple $100 a month for 5. So that covers like 90% of the market for $200 a month, right? And
yeah,
Adina on our team, who's our kind of our product manager and designer, she was the first team member at Threshold, and so we've always had a design first mentality. So it is literally like you log in and a digital coach pops up and it's like, click here and hey, let's create your first project. And it guides you through that experience of like best practice program design that we've learned over 15 years of working with the biggest and fanciest organizations. And it does that all without like with a self-service ideology. So
it's incredible that you really have put users at the heart of this experience, and you get it, you get the journey that they go through trying to pull all these things together, but you've done it all in a succinct journey by the
yeah.
sounds of it. So tell me, how, like, I mean, the journey of getting users onto the platform
Mm-hmm.
and onboarding them, and it always sounds very simple because it's like, oh, we've got this product and it does this
Right.
and they should just be able to use it. But like things evolve, and what users actually do and how they use products can somewhat differ to sometimes how stuff gets designed.
Yep.
Can you talk to us a bit about that in detail?
Sure. Yeah, I think we see people start in one of two places. Like most
Okay.
people are like data, data, data. Like we gotta get all the numbers together, right? So some people will hop in and like start building log frames and trying to track results and stuff like that. If that's the only thing you're gonna do, just stay in spreadsheets, right? That's fine. Like you'll be fine. You can give the spreadsheets to your communications team. You're not really going to probably be focused on ideation around brainstorming new ideas or on how to really drive impact. If your goal is just get the numbers up there, you're probably not going to stay with us, right? And we see a lot of that, right, happening in the marketplace. So we'll see people jump on, they'll play around for a little while, and they just go back to their spreadsheets. And I think we're going to see a lot of that kind of crash and burn as scrutiny plays a bigger part in whether people are really driving authentic change or not. And so I'm not pointing the finger at the humans behind this, because most of the people that end up in that spot, they're just too resource constrained to get beyond that, right? But people that are really interested in data, and we'll talk about one example when we get to part 3 of our discussion, they're curious about the why behind the data, right? Those are the people we're really after. If you're just trying to slap together the impact report, like, you're probably not the best user for us. But if you're curious about why your data is taking the shape that it's taking, then b.world can really help you with that. And then the second group is people that are they know what their vision and mission is, either as a nonprofit or as a corporate social team, et cetera. But they're not really sure, like, how, how to how to bring about the real societal level impact, right? Most folks are really just focused on the outputs. It's like, show up, do some work. This is how many pounds of trash we did. This is how many people showed up and participated. The number of volunteer hours. Like, that is not impact to us. Like, that may have an impact, and I'm not in any way like being controversial about that, but that's not impact. The idea is that you want to think through, if we do this, then this output will occur, right? Like, we will have removed this many pounds of plastic, or we will have accomplished this small output-based goal. But then what does that lead to? What's the outcome that's behind that, right? And then are we asking the right questions towards that outcome or objective that then are going to lead to the societal level change that we know in your heart you're really after? So the whiteboard capability in b.world helps with that design process, which is really tough. We struggle with it at our own company, and we're like building this all day long, right? It's taking the time to think about the meaning behind it and the questions that you're asking of, will this output lead to that outcome, lead to that actual impact? And so that's the part that people really, when they really get that, and they can see that, you can drag and drop all these things onto the page and then use it as a communication tool with your donors, supporters, employees, et cetera. Use it as a communication tool and an ideation tool for the adaptation that invariably occurs as you do this kind of work. That's the part that we get most excited about. So it's either like data or design, right? Are the real starting points.
And I think that, honestly, I cannot emphasize the importance of focusing on the impact enough there, because I see so many, and this is a very controversial thing to say, and I am not knocking impact reports, but 90% of the impact reports out there, to me, are not impact reports, they're outcome reports. That is, they've detailed the achievements, and I'm not knocking the achievements, they're brilliant and they're awesome, but it doesn't go that one step further in terms of detailing the impact. So what do great that you've achieved this, but what does that mean? Like on a grander scale, on a longer timeline, right. What's that going to, and that is hard. That is super, super hard. And to be honest, I couldn't tell you, I mean, it'd probably be on a, I don't know, very limited, like on my hand in terms of the number of organizations that can really do this with authority in this space, because it's so hard to do. So that's awesome that you're giving people the tools to be able to, and the space to be able to go that one step further of not just focusing on the outcomes, but taking them on a journey to get to that impact.
Yeah. I mean, think about like a parallel that a lot of people get. Like if I just give you some financial statements, right, which is like the number game, the output game, like you're going to get a pretty good idea of how a company's doing, right? At the surface level. But you'd have to do a lot more due diligence to understand like the why behind it, and then to be able to say, well, if I want to replicate that or expand it, right, or share it with other people to create strategic partnerships and drive more profit, if you were just focused on profit from the financial statements, like you'd need all that extra context. So why is it that we don't expect the same thing for outputs to outcomes to impact? Like we should, like this should be the standard. Everybody should do this, right? And so that's why it's going to probably take us the rest of our lives to push down, because it is really hard. These are multivariable equations, right? When you're thinking about the bigger issues like poverty or people experiencing homelessness or equity, which, these are going to be around for a long time, but we should be bringing the context together with the data so that the data actually makes sense, right? And the impact reports usually throw together the outputs with a bunch of graphics and a couple of stories. And the stories are super inspirational. And to your point, it's like, that's a really good start. Like, let's take that to the level that it really should be at. And that's, I think, where we're trying to live, is in that space after.
Can you highlight any really good examples, or is that putting you on the spot a bit?
Yeah, I can. I can talk about some of, like, I'll talk about one of my favorites, and going back to Puerto Rico. So, and this kind of speaks to us as a family too, and is there's an organization based in Puerto Rico called INE, or like INE, Instituto Nueva Escuela, like the new school institute, um, run by an executive director who is just a force to be reckoned with, and one of the most amazing human beings on the planet, named Ana Maria. And basically, what INE does is it focuses on trying to improve educational and therefore life outcomes for individuals in Puerto Rico. And the way they do that is by working at a community level, right? It's really a grassroots movement that layers in Montessori education on top of the public school system, right? So imagine
Okay.
the public school infrastructure with communities coming together saying, we want better outcomes for our kids. And then those schools convert with the support of ENA to becoming Montessori schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the numbers, like, are off the charts and they've been doing this for a very long time, and they're working to expand the movement. I think it's something like 60 schools now. And so
Wow.
INE has been a long-standing, they were one of the first pilot organizations with b.world, and they're an organization we care about deeply. Both of our kids are Montessori kids. I was a
Mm.
Montessori kid. And I think the Maria Montessori over 100 years ago had it right, long before all of these, like, new fancy school ideas came out from Silicon Valley fancy people. And
Mm.
just Montessori's like, got it. Follow the child, right? It works. It's just like following our employees, like, to support, team members.
Yeah.
Like, they had it right a long time ago. So INE really has been a data-driven organization for a long time. And imagine trying to collect school and community-based outcomes across a distributed educational environment,
Mm.
sometimes in areas where don't even have connectivity.
Mm.
So INA has been brilliant at this, and they've really helped us drive the roadmap. And they've also been really instrumental in going from the data side to using the whiteboards to ideate around, like, are we prioritizing the right programs for that community, right? For the needs of the real humans, kids and families in that community. Are we prioritizing the right things? Like, are we going to get to that overall outcome? And so they're able to kind of use those capabilities in sync together. And so they're one of my favorites, and an organization that we'll continue to support as long as they're around.
They sound amazing. And I have a question, because you said they were one of the first pilot organizations. Mm-hmm. How many pilot organizations did you have?
We tried to get about 100, but we got about 10
Wow.
10 or so. We did the wait list thing and all that kind of stuff, and it worked okay. We don't have a huge marketing budget, so we're pretty scrappy with those kinds of things. That's
the wrong word. I think selective. You've got to be like, it's a challenge. You've got to think creatively. Yeah. You got to think really, really creatively, I think.
But we have organizations like INE, which are from a nonprofit perspective, they're sizable and they're impacted outsized, for the work that they do. And then we have very small nonprofit or grassroots organizations, but we also have, our largest customer, which I can't say their name, as a 300-person sustainability team that operates one of the largest, manufacturing and retail operations on the planet, and they've been with us since really early on. So we're serving.
Wow.
And part of our goal is to figure out how might these organizations work together, right? Like that big corporate, they do some of their own work, but because it's distributed, they're almost always working with local partners, right? Like if you want to, let's say you have a sprawling retail operation in Turkey, right? And you need to do anti-violence training in the workplace for the people that work in your retail locations. Like, you're not an expert in that. So you're going to have to lean on. You're going to find local partners that are far more knowledgeable. And so one of the key things that b.world allows you to do is to share projects across those partnerships, right? So that if you're going to engage a local partner, maybe through a grant or maybe through a subcontract, you can expose that project to them, give them access to it. They can track that learning, track the results, write the stories. And then instead of filling out your status reports and all this other like ad hoc stuff, they can just drag and drop all the stuff into the stories, and then that's your status report, right? So you're actually saving a ton of time in using the tool for this kind of collaboration. So
amazing. So going on to the I guess the final part, but you have been on this incredible roller coaster adventure, and you know the product definitely has evolved, and it sounds like it's in a really good place. But have you come across any examples that have inspired you around tech for good, that maybe that you have kind of taken the spirit of, or I don't know, that you just want to shine a light on today?
yeah, we could talk for a long time about this, but I love the question because I'm not going to talk about anything about us in this section. Just for the
Okay.
record, I'm going to talk about other people that are like I think are lighting it up. Um, one initiative that I'm really inspired by, based in Canada, is with an organization called Common Approach, and they're really focused on kind of fueling this really important discussion around standards, right? And how important it is for us to agree on some flexible standards so that we can communicate with each other about this concept of impact, right? And outputs
Mm.
to impact. And so they have brought together a bunch of experts from academia, from the commercial space, from the nonprofit space, and they have a number of different standards that are out there and open source and available for people to incorporate into their products. And they have a very close partnership with the Canadian government, which is going to really improve the state and communicability of shared impact throughout their ecosystem. So huge fan of that organization and the work that they're doing. The technology behind that is designs, right, which are a technology in and of themselves.
Mm.
And the real core of it is this idea that we don't have to have one standard, right? Like we're never going to agree on the gap accounting rules for impact. It's not going to happen. Like that's my perspective. And we should stop saying there is going to be one standard because it's just a colossal waste of time. What we should agree on is the relationship between different emerging standards that work in different contexts and the proportionality or relationship between them such that the learning can travel and we can use that information to make fact-based and
Mm.
contextual decisions about where we should make our investments. And I think that the team there has done a great job of not just creating the standards, but creating the ability for standards to be interrelated with each other. The second one, which is similar to that, was an effort that Microsoft stewarded called the nonprofit common data model, which we were a big contributor to in its early years. And the same idea there was that we ought not to have to reinvent the wheel every time we want to create something new in this space for nonprofit technology. And we need the systems to be more interoperable, and we need them to be more cost effective. And so that has manifested in hundreds of companies, us included, building to that standard so that if someone builds a fundraising app or has a fundraising app that's related or mapped to the nonprofit common data model, and we're mapped to it from an impact perspective, that money flowing in can be connected directly to the money flowing out. And so I'm really, really proud of the work that we contributed to that. I'm really grateful that Microsoft has stewarded that effort. And then the last one I'm going to point out is a nonprofit that I've been affiliated with for a long, long time called the Surfrider Foundation. And if you don't know Surfrider, but you care about the coasts, you definitely want to know Surfrider. So Surfrider was founded many years ago to kind of protect a place in California that was going to get destroyed because people wanted to build stuff in a way that wasn't
Mm.
the right way to build it. And
Mm.
now Surfrider is a national, and there's international affiliates as well. And Surfrider does an incredible job of monitoring through a grassroots movement the coastal environment. And so if you're like not sure if you should get in the water or not, you should go check out Surfrider's sort of better beach alliance that they've created with some international corporates, as well as their state of the beach report. And they have a lot of online tools that are really important for those of us that inhabit the coastal environment, because it's good to know what's in the water when you're getting into it. And they're using a lot of technology to do that. So big fans of those three things.
Amazing. And as you were talking, it made me think of an grassroots organisation in the UK called Surfers Against Sewage, who are doing some really, really, so they're doing some really clever things. And I was just like, oh, I wonder if they're affiliated. Like, I didn't click, but I wonder if I'm sure they're aware of each other.
Sure, and they probably team up on a lot of different initiatives, because coastal water, like we hear a lot about like the Great Pacific Plastic Patch.
Yeah.
And we hear a lot about the reefs and things like that, but the coastal environments it's the place where the overwhelming majority of people live and get their food and income from, and it's also hugely important for tourism and recreation. And so Surfrider kind of focuses on that specific environment, and is a really, the leadership team, with Chad Nelson, who's the CEO at Surfrider, they just like blow you away, incredible. And they have they have a great story, and they're great storytellers, and they're great at using technology to raise and deploy funds and to get this kind of important programmatic work done. So yeah, hats off.
Amazing. Yeah, well, hats off to all three examples. And I haven't actually come across, is it Comet Approach?
Common Approach.
Common Approach. And yeah, it's great. Thank you so much for shining a light on those three examples. And yeah, I think that brings us to an end. So Dan, thank you so much for your time. I think for me, the most important element, or something that is really, really shining a light, is just that journey from outcomes to impact. And the fact that essentially your platform can help you take that leap and start that journey, which is a complicated beast, and quite a lot of people are struggling with it, but they can get there. And I think that's a really important point. And I know, speaking to not only our clients at 360Q, but the people that I speak with daily, they all struggle with this stuff. Like, it's not an easy space to be in or to try and navigate. So yeah, amazing work that you guys are doing, and your whole team, Dan. I love to shout out to your team, at the start.
Hats off to the thresholders. Yeah, and to your point, like, spreadsheets aren't going to get us there. You got to get You can use b.world, you can pick another app, you can build your own. But if you're going to stick with spreadsheets, you're not going to get there. So get off spreadsheets.
Love it. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Dan.
too. I really appreciate being here. It's been a pleasure.